Hello and welcome to today's edition of Read Tech Insights. Today's topic, placing UDI on Class 1 medical device labels and reporting UDI data to FDA GUDID. Today's presenters are Andrew Pfeiffer and Mike Cathcart of Read Tech.
Hello, my name is Andrew Pfeiffer. I am a senior account executive here at Read Tech, and I help support and assist all of our medical device customers with FDA UDI compliance initiatives, as well as GDSN initiatives, and also global UDI compliance concerns.
And I'm Mike Cathcart. Like Andrew, I am an account executive here at Read Tech, supporting medical device companies with UDI compliance in the United States as well as globally, in addition to achieving GDSN syndication. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today regarding the FDA's UDI mandate as it relates to Class 1 medical devices. So Andrew, what is UDI?
So the UDI mandate, which stands for Unique Device Identification, was instituted to standardize the labeling and reporting of medical devices across the country. Now, according to the FDA, the UDI system was established to adequately identify medical devices sold in the United States from manufacturing through distribution to patient use. Now, Mike, I want to turn it back over to you. Now, who would you say is responsible for UDI compliance?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Andrew. Ultimately, the FDA identifies the entity that's responsible for UDI compliance as the device labeler. They define the device labeler as a person who causes a label to be applied to a device or who causes that label to be modified with the intent that the device will then be introduced into interstate commerce without any subsequent replacement or modification of that label. In most cases, the device labeler will often be the manufacturer. However, it's not necessarily always. It can also be a specification developer, a single-use device reprocessor, or even a convenience kit assembler, repackager, and relabeler. Additionally, the FDA went with a phased approach with their UDI compliance deadlines. After the final rule was published in September of 2013, Class 3 devices had 1 year to be compliant with the regulation, followed by implantables, life-sustaining, and life-saving devices 1 year later. And then Class 2s in 2016, Class 2 kits in 2018, and now we are coming up to the Class 1 deadline in September of 2020, so just under 1 year away. Now, Andrew, do you think there's going to be any additional extensions allotted to Class 1s?
Yeah, Mike, as you can see on this chart, the initial Class 1 UDI deadline was September 24th, 2018. Now, fortunately for the medical device industry, the FDA provided a 2-year extension. However, there have been no indications that there will be another one. So, with less than a year until the Class 1 UDI deadline, it is critical to start implementing a UDI plan if you haven't started already. So there is a lot to manage to ensure that your company's UDI implementation plan is executed properly. And so with that being said, there's a lot of different components to be able to manage. And Mike, maybe could you give us some better understanding as to what those key components are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the UDI requirements under the FDA's regulation really fall into 2 buckets. The first one being labeling, where a UDI, both in human readable as well as machine readable, meaning a barcode, needs to be affixed to the product label. Underneath the labeling, there's a regulation or a requirement that affects a subset of devices called direct marking. This means that the UDI in either human readable or machine readable needs to be physically on the device, whether that be molded on, etched on, or printed onto it. Devices that are affected by that go through a reprocessing and then are used on a new patient. The second aspect to UDI compliance is the data reporting. Labelers are responsible for submitting a list of 57 data attributes to the FDA's global UDI database, or GUDID, and then using that information as well as the UDI numbers in annual reports, such as product complaints, post-market surveillance, or recall reports. So Andrew, can you walk us through a UDI label?
Absolutely. So what you're viewing here is an example of a GS1 1D linear barcode. And let's examine this a little bit further. So below the 1D linear barcode, there is your concatenated unique device identifier, and that's made up of your device identifier and your production identifier. So if we want to take this at a little bit more of a granular approach, the device identifier is made up of a static number that remains the same, does not ever change. So that number is made up of an indicator digit, a GS1 company prefix, an item reference number, and a check digit. Now to the right of that is your production identifier. So this has your serial number, your expiration date, your batch and lot number, and this is a dynamic number that's consistently changing due to the various different expiration dates and serial numbers. You'll also notice that there are some numbers in parentheses. So the number 17 in parentheses indicates that anything after that is your expiration date. The number 10 in parentheses indicates that anything after that is the batch and lot number. And then the number 21 indicates that anything after that is your serial number. So there are two other FDA accredited issuing agencies in addition to GS1. Another one is HIBIC, and they would provide you an alphanumeric device identifier. And then there's also ICC BBA. They are a very niche issuing agency, and they provide device identifiers to companies that manufacture human cell, tissue, and blood banking type products. Also, I want to make one quick note that if you have products or labels where you do not have a lot of real estate, you can also use what's called a 2D matrix barcode, which makes it a little bit easier to place that barcoding on your label. So Mike, now I want to turn it back over to you, and if you could just give us a nice little tour of the 64 data attributes that need to be submitted to the FDA GUDID.
I'd be happy to, Andrew. So as mentioned earlier, device labelers are responsible for submitting 57 data attributes to the FDA, and then the FDA's GUDID system will populate the additional 7, creating 64 total. In my experience, though, there are some of these data attributes that cause more questions than some of the others, notably the GMDM code. GMDM stands for Global Medical Device Nomenclature. It is a numeric code from the agency of GMDN, and it's used to kind of standardize the device descriptions across multiple different languages. Another one that I get a lot of questions on is the FDA listing number. So that is a proprietary number. It is not going to be public within the database, and other organizations won't be able to see that. But you receive that number from the FDA once you've registered your device as well as establishment with the FDA. So it is important that you maintain those numbers, because those two, both invalid GMDM and invalid listing numbers, are, in my experience, the highest or most likely cause for a failed submission to the FDA. Additionally, this production control. So Andrew, do labelers need to make a new submission every time they come out with a new lot or batch or serial number?
Now, the short answer to that question is no, they do not. These are strict Boolean fields. So after they have answered the question yes or no, they do not have to collect all the information for the production control anytime they may need to make a new submission.
Great, thanks for clearing that up for me. And then now the part where everyone has been waiting for, the Class 1 exceptions. So notably, Class 1 devices do not need to display a production identifier on their device label. They are only required to display the device identifier. And then Andrew, can you explain a little bit what GMP exemption is?
Yeah, absolutely. So GMP stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. So any type of product that is listed as GMP exempt does not have to be in compliance with the UDI mandate. And as you can see here, if you're unsure as to whether your products are GMP exempt, you can actually go on the FURL's database and look up your products using an FDA product code. It's a three alpha character product code, and that will let you know whether or not your products are GMP exempt or not. And if they are exempt, then you don't have to worry about UDI compliance. Great. And then what is this UPC exception? So with the UPC exception, if you are currently already using the UPCs on your labeling, then you don't have to worry about obtaining UDI labels for your specific products.
Do you still need to submit your data to GUDID?
For the data submissions, you do still have to submit that data to the GUDID. So you do not get out of that, unfortunately.
Thank you. And additionally, if there are any further questions or you would like to reach out to either Andrew or I to discuss UDI compliance and those requirements that are facing your organization in more detail, our contact information is on the screen. We would be happy to help.